So, good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are really glad you're joining us today for what I personally think is an incredibly timely and important conversation: organizational design in the age of AI and automation. I think there's a lot to discuss right now about AI tools and automation and productivity, but today's session is really about something bigger. It's about leadership, and it's about how organizations adapt when technology changes faster than our systems, our structures, and sometimes even our people are ready for. And most importantly, it's about how we lead through that change intentionally. So, if we haven't met before, my name is Maya Dimishkovich, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Carroll Community College, and I will be your moderator today. So before we jump into the content of this presentation, I'm going to go through some of the housekeeping items. So today's session is being recorded, and we will send a recording to everyone next week, so you have a chance to revisit if you are interested. Also, feel free to introduce yourself in chat. I think it should be at the top of your screen. We would love to know who is joining us today. Also, anytime throughout the webinar, feel free to ask questions. You should see a Q&A section at the top of your screen. So just drop in your questions and we will get to them at some point during the webinar. And I also hope you stick with us till the end, because we will be sharing some handouts that you can take back to your team and start working through our discussion today as a team or your organization. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, or maybe have never heard of Business Solutions, I wanted to take a quick moment to introduce Carroll's Business Solutions. Business Solutions is a service of the college that partners with organizations to deliver customized training and consulting, and they focus on developing leaders, aligning teams, and driving real results. What I think is really setting them apart is their approach. They're not just one-size-fits-all model. John and his team really take the time to understand each organization's people, goals, and challenges, and build solutions that are practical, relevant, and built to last. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce John Zeigenfuse, who will be our moderator today and pretty much every webinar. So John, take it from here.
Thanks, Maya. It's exciting to be back. For those of you that have been tried and true attendees, this is our fifth one. And it's really something that we at the college wanted to do to help support the local community, the local businesses, even our own college and our own employees. And so it's just an opportunity to gain some valuable insights without you doing all the work. Maya and I read a lot, we digest a lot of content, and then we kind of take out the key points and give it to you. So you have the Reader's Digest version or the Cliff Notes version of some wonderful things that are out there. So it's really just kind of you're outsourcing some of these opportunities to us, and we just really want to support you guys. And if there's anything that we can do more to support you, we would love that. We would love that. That's what we're here for. So I do want to say this is my least favorite way to do teachings and trainings. It's because I can't see people, and I love to get the feedback and the interaction from people. So yeah, just buckle up. We're going to have some fun with this. And as Maya said, it's very timely. I know everyone's talking about AI right now. You can't escape it. Even if you're living under a rock, you can't escape it. I really want to kind of present what the core idea of this webinar is going to be. But in order for me to do that, I first want to talk about what it's not, right? Because I don't know if you're coming here that maybe you read into the title what it was going to be, but it's not to introduce any new AI tools to make your life easier. Everyone has a different one, and I couldn't talk enough about all the AI tools that are out there. I'm not going to talk about any of the latest AI software or any productivity hacks to make your life easier. The core idea here is highlighted in the blue with the quote here. What happens to organization when technology changes faster than leadership systems? How do we incorporate those things? So there is a shift going on. And we need to be aware as leaders what's actually changing. There's also, with any change, there's also a risk that happens. And sometimes we get things wrong when there's a risk. So what are organizations getting wrong as they adopt AI and AI policies? What opportunity is out there? What are the really good and effective organizations doing differently that we can learn from? And then the leadership challenge for us is how do we respond to that? How do we respond to the shift in the workflow, in the workforce, the risk that we may or may not be seeing, and the opportunities that we could seize them and really move organizations forward? So that's kind of the leadership challenge and the leadership responsibilities there. So that's kind of what it is, and hopefully that resonates with some of you. So as always, as a former educator, I'm part of the learning institution, we have these objectives. So the purpose of this session, first one is to understand how AI and automation are reshaping work and organizational design. Just have a good base, all right? We also want to talk about avoiding common mistakes during technology-driven change. There's many organizations that struggle with AI implementation. If you're one, you rest assured you're in great company. All right. How to issues such as poor communication, lack of trust, and misalignment can undermine your efforts for trying to bring in AI and automation into your organization. Then a balance of efficiency with culture, trust, and engagement is really, really important. So how do the leading organizations redefine work that enhances, not replaces, the human capabilities? The next one is redesign work around both human and AI strengths. And the last one, lead people effectively through that transformation. All right. So with that, those are the objectives. I know they're big. I know they're lofty. So buckle up. Here we go. So organizations are no longer redesigning jobs. They're redesigning the distribution of work between humans and machines. This isn't the first time this has happened. All right. If I was to take a poll question, which I'm not right now, but what do you think would be, and this is rhetorical, so you can think about it, the answer in your head. What do you think is the greatest invention or discovery in the last 200 years? Think about that. Maybe somebody's saying cars, smartphones, the light bulb. Maybe somebody's actually saying sliced bread, the greatest thing since sliced bread. But actually, I think, and this is my 2 cents here, it was the person's ability to create and harness the power of electricity, because those things really enhanced our quality of life. Think about the things that run on electricity in your house. You've got a dishwasher, you've got a washing machine, you've got a stove, you even have a hot water heater, a thermostat, an HVAC, water pump, lights. All that ability to harness and generate electricity has actually made our lives easier and bought us back hours on the week. There's only 168 hours in a week. Think about if you didn't have 3 of those appliances, or the 5 or 7 that I talked about, how much time was spent just existing, washing the dishes by hand, washing your clothes by hand, hanging them out on the clothesline, starting a fire and cooking your food. That invention really was a redesign of the distribution between what humans do and what machines do. It was laid out over a long period of time, so we've kind of felt the evolution of that. What we're seeing with AI is a revolution, right? It's quick and it can be painful. So not the first time. And I know there's sometimes been fear about the adoption of AI or computers or machines. So I don't know if you know this, when ATMs were first introduced, many people predicted the end of bank tellers. That's actually not what happened. Something unexpected. The number of bank tellers initially increased with the invention of the ATM. And you might be thinking, well, how is that? I mean, the machine's doing the work, dispensing the cash and receiving the deposits. Because what the ATMs did, it reduced the cost of operating branches, right? Reduced the cost. So banks actually were able to open more branches. And then the tellers inside shifted from transactional work, handing out money, receiving checks. The ATMs could do that. And it shifted to transformational work, which was the relationship building and the customer service, which was needed and sometimes lacking in that industry. So the technology didn't eliminate humans, it changed the nature of human work. So the question isn't what jobs will disappear. I think the better question is what human value becomes more important as AI and automation increases. What human value becomes more important. So where do we feel the freedom not to do tasks anymore that have to get done on our plate, but to make connections that we hadn't had time for before? So what human value becomes more important as automation increases. So the best organizations redesign work intentionally. So we have the human strength over here, and we've got the AI strength over here. So how do we differentiate which work goes to the humans and which work goes to the AI, right? Just like which work goes to the dishwasher, which work stays with the human. So here I laid it out as empathy, judgment, relationship building, creativity, and ethical reasoning, stuff AI cannot do. All right. And then what the strength of AI is speed, pattern recognition, data processing, repetition, and scale. So think about those things in your job. Okay. If you write the list of everything you do, which ones can you now automate and give to machines? And which one do you need to treasure and keep and protect, right? And not outsource it. So yeah, just with those things, if you end up automating something that's broken, it just kind of accelerates it. And we're going to talk more about that. But you cannot ignore culture. All right. You cannot do that as you move your organization forward to adopting this AI. So I have a little curve here that I want to show you. It's a bell curve. All right. I used to be a former stat professor, so I like this, the normal distribution curve, some of you. The axes here on this curve are labeled as the benefits of adopting and integrating AI and the levels of engagement. So you can see as the level of engagement goes up, all right, that it increases towards the middle, but if your level of engagement goes too much, it actually decreases the benefits. So if you look here, the first one on the tail end on those outliers is people avoiding AI. And there are people out there that just don't want to do it. They think it's dangerous. They may think it's unnecessary. Maybe some of them have a conscience when it comes to AI and says it's really harmful for the environment, so I don't want to contribute to that. So there is an avoidance of AI, but AI is not going away. All right. And then there's this hesitant observer that kind of comes in and is looking at it, does a few things. Maybe is most familiar with Chat GPT because that's what opens up when you open up your Google server, your Google Drive or whatever, is the Chat GPT. And sometimes people use it like an advanced search engine. Moving all the way up to the top level, which receives the highest benefits, is this phrase, intentional integration, making sure you've done the homework, you've analyzed, you've looked at the resources and the opportunities out there, and you integrate it, but you integrate it in the right way and the right processes. Then you can get the heavy dependence. And then, of course, the final one is cognitive surrender, is that AI is doing everything for you. And I think we've all had moments in our lives. I know when I grew up, I probably had about 20 phone numbers memorized, right? Because that's what we did. We had to memorize somebody's phone number. If we got stuck somewhere, I got to pay phone, I got to call. I might have 4 phone numbers memorized right now because I've become dependent on my phone to do that, which does free up my cognitive ability to think about other things. And you think about, we used to know street names, and now we just rely on the GPS. So if you go too far, and MIT has done some wonderful studies on this. One of their studies is they took grad level students and had them each write an essay. Some used books and resources. They only had the library at their fingertips without computers. Some had search engines and the internet, and some used AI. They had them all write their essays. And then they called them in to give an oral defense of their essay. The people that relied on AI actually failed during the oral defense because they didn't do the work, and it's kind of called that cognitive surrender. And there's so much other resources out there. I think Stanford has done a great on people that become too dependent on AI, what happens to their brain and their thinking and cognitive skills. So the goal is not AI avoidance or AI dependence. The goal really here is intentional integration. Okay. Um, Stay away from the tails, try to get to the middle and do that. So if we do the intentional integration, know what we can offboard, know what how it can support us even in the creativity, we're just going to be in a better spot. So this next slide I know is a big no-no because it's so heavily on the content. But this is going to be recorded and you can look at it later. And I'm going to give you each, maybe just give everybody in attendance, maybe about 10, 15, 20 seconds to look over that. What I did is I just broke it down in those 5 categories: the avoidance, hesitant observer, intentional integration, heavy dependence, and cognitive surrender, and created what's the right mindset? How do you know where you are? What behaviors come out of that mindset because we act with how we think? And what risks, potential risks, are there for us in either the avoidance or the cognitive surrender, in even the hesitant observer or the heavy dependence? So take a moment, look at that, and just read through it. And I'll get going here in a second. But organizations that are going to thrive in the future will not simply become more technologically intelligent. They'll become intentionally human. And that's where we're really going to focus the next section of this webinar. All right, hope you had a time to look at that. And as you're looking at that, maybe you recognize where you are, and the behaviors that follow and the potential risk that could come after that. So on to the next slide. So AI versus AI is how I call it. Artificial intelligence versus our authentic intelligence. The machine versus the humanity. So artificial intelligence is a great resource. It can quickly analyze data. It can generate all kinds of presentations for you, things that were a little bit more cumbersome. It can automate some workflows, produce recommendations, and streamline repetitive work. Okay, it is a wonderful tool. But AI and AI integrated poorly will never really help build trust and generate trust in your organization. So the authentic intelligence, the human element, we must apply discernment and judgment when it comes to looking at the data that's spit out. We must inspire and communicate meaning through the presentations that AI can generate, to build trust through relationships when workflows are automated, to evaluate ethics and implications, all right, when we get recommendations from our AI tools. And then when we streamline repetitive work, we must still coach, develop, and lead our people. That's very important. So AI can generate a lot of information, but leaders still need to generate the trust in their people and their organizations. And what is AI really changing? So this is kind of a cool little graphic I put together, but most jobs can contain repetitive work. And as you move up, then it's got creative work. Then it's got relational work and judgment work. So AI affects each one differently. So if I kind of put up this little machine that I made here, if this is our human cognitive labor going into the machine, all right, then can we expect AI to spit out? Well, hopefully some of the grind work is offloaded and de-skilling some routine tasks. But then AI can really act as an accelerant and an amplifier when it comes to the creative, the relational, and the judgment work, generating ideas and helping you solve complex problems. There is a little tool here that I use as far as prompt engineering with the top part, the creative and strategic, as I actually ask AI to interview me, to ask me questions that I might not be asking of myself. And that gets me thinking, and that uses AI as really a thought partner and not a thought leader. And I think when we talk about this AI versus AI, authentic intelligence versus artificial intelligence, so many people are using AI as the thought leader. I have a problem, help me solve it, you spit it out, and then great, you take the recommendation. There is a problem because AI doesn't know your people. AI doesn't know your systems. AI doesn't know your organizations and some of your output. So when you need AI to ask you those questions from either one of your stakeholders, hey, this is what I do. Ask me a question from a customer's perspective or employee's perspective, one of my direct reports perspective, and get you thinking about things a little bit differently. You might remember this little time matrix, the Eisenhower matrix from one of our early webinars, and I didn't animate it because I just wanted you to see it. It's another tool here. But you can look at all of our work for our daily week. It kind of can be broken into one of those quadrants there. Things that are important and urgent, important and not urgent. If you were to draw a line going across the horizontal axis, the things below the curve, the things that are not important but urgent and not important and not urgent, those are things you can kind of offboard. Some of those repetitive tasks, those things that you look at those adjectives written there, trivial, low value, or interruptive, busyness, and administrative. Those are things you can allow your AI thought partner to help you manage those things so you have more bandwidth for the things above the curve or above that line, the really important things that rely on a human element and judgment, discernment, wisdom, expertise, background, all those things, the history. So technology can remove the low value work so we as humans can increase the high value contribution of what we bring to the workplace. Um, um, I know this is a lot of information, so stick tight. I think we're going to have a few poll questions coming up here soon.
We just had one, John. So
Oh,
we
we
just
did
had
have one.
one.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. How would you describe your organization's current approach to AI? You should see the answers in chat. So it's very interesting. Looks like 65% are still exploring opportunities and use cases, and about 29% are actively integrating AI, which
Oh,
is great.
good. That is
Yep.
great. Awesome. Um, all right. So my next slide here is okay, so if we know the benefits, all right, where it can enhance or amplify our creativity and judgment, and it can actually replace and differentiate or send some of the repetitive work, some of the analytical work, some of the administrative work offboard it to AI, then we have more bandwidth to really focus on the human element. But there are some things we need to be careful of, and this is where kind of organizations struggle. All right, so common pitfalls would be automating broken processes. So you got to get your house in order because if you automate a broken process, many organizations are going to rush to automate and some of these inefficiencies without first improving the underlying process. And I think a key insight is technology accelerates whatever system already exists, whether it's good or bad. So if communication and workflows or decision making are already dysfunctional, AI is just going to scale the dysfunction even faster. So you have to do your work as a leader, as an employee saying, okay, AI is not going to fix a broken system. AI is just going to go ahead and show us the inefficiencies even faster or accelerate whatever system already exists. So be
Mhm.
careful with that. Fix your system first and then automate it. So focusing only on efficiency is another one. Organizations will evaluate AI primarily through the lens of speed, cost reduction, productivity, and those things are important. But if you overemphasize efficiency, it can unintentionally damage the culture, morale, trust, and engagement of your people. Because efficiency without humanity will eventually weaken your organization. So just
Mm.
be careful.
John, I
Did you have a
understand
question?
that. Yeah,
Okay.
I understand that point because I think it will probably resonate with a lot of leaders right now. So you mentioned that technology can scale quickly, but trust develops slowly. So how do leaders maintain trust during the period of this rapid change?
Okay, good question, Maya. How do leaders maintain trust?
Hmm.
The very first way is communication, right? People create stories in silence. So if you start bringing in AI
Hmm.
without communicating it clearly, people will create stories that may or may not be true. Oh, we're getting replaced. Oh, they're bringing in AI, and I'm going to get moved out of this position. And that creates fear. And when there's fear, there's not trust. And then you'll see a level of engagement possibly drop off, or even worse, you can see it start to deteriorate the fabric of the culture you work so hard to build. So number one is communication. Number two is vulnerability. Allow your people and employees the opportunity to ask you questions, right?
Mhm.
And be open and honest. So you have to first communicate clearly, and then second, you got to be open to hear what they're bringing back to you. So those two things will help really build trust.
Mhm. I cannot agree more. Being a communication and marketing professional, communication,
Yeah.
I think, is key to implementation of any change, right? And you need to do it frequently with purpose and clarity, not just once, right? But on a regular basis.
And,
Um,
oh, I was going to just
mhm,
say to that point, Maya, is that as leaders, a lot of us are drivers. We have a bias towards action, and so sometimes we act first and think later. So we got to kind of
mhm,
slow that down a little bit because technology can be implemented very quickly, but as Maya said, trust cannot. So if you introduce AI without transparency, communication, involvement, creating psychological safety, employees are going to fill in those gaps with fear and assumptions. They're going to create that story that I said in silence and asking themselves the questions, will I still be relevant? Is my role being replaced? Does leadership even value what I do, or do they just value efficiencies like the
mhm,
people? And I
mhm.
said this, people create the stories in silence. So just be careful, over communicate. All right, sorry,
Yeah.
Maya, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's great. We had a second poll, which is what is your organization's biggest challenge related to AI? Do you see the answers
I don't.
in the chat?
Okay. I will in a second.
Okay.
Was there any great
So
insights you see?
lack of clear strategy is the top one. So 42% have a big challenge with clear strategy, which
Okay.
makes sense. The second one is training and upskilling employees. So that's the next one. And employee concerns and resistance, what we just talked about.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the last where organizations might struggle is under investing in the human skills, putting all their time and energy to getting the new AI and implementing that, but not investing in the human skills. So AI's capabilities increase, organizations are going to overlook the importance of strengthening uniquely human capabilities such as emotional intelligence, communication, adaptability, coaching, reasoning, relationship building. So this is where you need to be careful. As technology becomes more advanced, human leadership becomes more important, not less. So as you weigh the scales in your organization, say, okay, we're going to do this AI. So now I have time to invest in my team with these human skills and talk about emotional intelligence, better communication, being adaptable, coaching them, ethical reasoning, and 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 that's how you maintain the trust. So don't rely heavily on just the efficiencies and the speed of what you can get things done at a lower cost, but really think about the human element of the people you lead. And I keep saying this, people create stories in silence, so you got to communicate and you got to be open. All right, moving on. So the future of work is not humans versus AI or humans surrendering to AI, kind of those ends of that normal distribution curve. The future belongs to people that use artificial intelligence to amplify their authentic intelligence. So, so the human capabilities that rise in importance as we adopt more AI are going to be our critical thinking, communication, adaptability, emotional intelligence, and so forth. Those other things that we talked about in that poll question. So as AI becomes more capable, our uniquely human leadership becomes more valuable. There's a great story, and I kind of told a little bit, two of them. And I don't know if you remember this, but I think the year was 1997 when IBM invented the computer called Deep Blue to take down the reigning champion chess player. So here's a picture from the Times. Deep Blue defeats Kasparov. I think that's how you pronounce it. I mean, my can maybe help me out with the pronunciation there. Uh,
Kasparov.
yeah, Kasparov. Thank you. And it was shocking. I remember that a computer outthought a human, and not only any human, but a grandmaster chess player.
Mm.
And initially, his reaction was kind of to lash out at IBM and just say, this is going to ruin chess. It's going to take things away. People could cheat and all these other things. He lashes out. But in actually 2005, the actual person that lost to Deep Blue as the grandmaster, he created a new way to play chess, and he called it freestyle tournament. And there was a large purse that he and some other computer companies kind of put behind this. And it's kind of called Centaur Chess, a couple other names. But the people were lured to it because what could happen is you would combine your human element of playing chess and reading the people across from you and use the idea of the AI. Because Deep Blue could do 2 million calculations, chess moves per second. And that's how to defeat him. It was purely analytical, right? It was numbers based. But then as people were playing against these AI agents and these computer chess, they started to bring back in a human element that the computer could not anticipate because they weren't doing the most productive or the most like correct or analytically correct move. They were understanding the computer's going to be analytical, so let me go opposite and do the antithesis of that. That was kind of a really cool thing. It was written about in MIT did a whole article on it. Um, just how that worked and changed things. So here are some quotes from the article. All right, that the surprise came at the conclusion of that. The winner of this tournament that had this large purse was revealed not to be a grandmaster with a state-of-the-art PC, but a pair of amateur American chess players using 3 computers at the same time. And they were very skilled at manipulating and coaching their computers to look into the positions that effectively counteracted it. And so you see these little equations at the bottom. What they determined, what MIT determined, is that you could have a weaker chess player. That's what WH is, a weaker human. But you add in artificial intelligence and you add in the BP, which is a better process, you're better than any AI computer in chess. And these amateur players were able to beat computers that could do 2 million computations per second because the computers were just going on the analytical models. And they even found out that a WH, a weak human, plus artificial intelligence, plus a really good process was even greater than a very strong chess player or a grandmaster, a strong human, plus AI, and an inferior process. So the idea here that MIT took out of this study, it's not to just have great leaders, not to just have a great AI tools, but to incorporate a very good process. Because even somebody like me, a weak human, with a good process and tools available that are AI, learning how to do it, I could beat a grandmaster with AI that has inferior process. And the implication is for those of us in leadership in organizations, corporations, businesses, we're not going to be these level 5 leaders that people write about. We're people that have kind of come up through the system, ordinary people. But with AI and a really good process, we could outperform a lot of other organizations. So think not just about the AI tools, but think about the integration process, the better process. That's the part that this webinar is about, is how do you get the intentional integration into that, where you elevate the human skill and elevate the machine skill so that your whole company rises. And it's phenomenal when you can do that. So a couple questions I want to encourage you to ask of yourself. All right, and like I said, this is going to be recorded so you can go back and watch it. What work should AI support, not replace, that you do? How do you get AI to be a thought partner and not the thought leader? What creates the greatest human value in what you do in your job? What should become more human as you're able to use AI to help supplement and complement your daily tasks? And what capabilities will matter most in the next 3 years? So asking you to forecast. In the chat, Maya's also going to go ahead and put a webinar handout that asks you some of these questions that we talked about. So with that, my time is done talking about the integration. How do we become more human, not less human? And how do we create more time, right? By doing that, the better process is really what's important here.
Mhm. Thanks, John. And we have a great question from Don. Don, thank you for asking this. So we talked about being honest and transparent with team members about communicating the use of AI. Other components of communication plan that you also feel are important. So honesty,
Okay.
transparency. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, say it one more time, Maya, because it was a longer question. I'm sorry.
So when you're communicating with the team about AI use, in addition to being transparent and honest, what else should you do? What other parts of communication plan should you consider? I
Hmm.
can answer from my side while you're still
Yeah, go
thinking.
ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I think as leaders, another important component of communication is outlining the vision. And where do you see what is the goal you're trying to achieve with the implementation of different tools? So outlining your vision so your team can buy into this vision and help you achieve it. So that's my answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to build on that. I think first that a leader should be doing experimenting with AI a little bit in private and on their personal stuff. And then they communicate to them, hey, this has been my story. Okay. Because you can't argue with your own story and how it's helped you do that. So you do it. So you kind of like you're modeling using it and then you share that. And then there has to be something inspiring as far as your communication. So I'm stealing my thing, the vision. If we incorporate this, look at what it can do for you. Because it has to be about the employee. Um, everybody gets caught in that whirlwind. That was the slide of that time matrix. And I know sometimes we let our day dictate our schedule rather than us dictate our schedule. We go into the workday with great thoughts. I'm gonna get this done, I'm gonna get this done, I'm gonna get this done. And then you open up your Outlook and then your inbox and you start responding to these emails. And then all of a sudden your day gets hijacked a little bit and you're like, I didn't get anything done on my list. I got very few things done on my list. So what a leader needs to do is say, if we adopt this, I've adopted it in my own life and it's helped me out. And if we adopt this, look at what it can do for you. Because people are innately selfish. They care about the organization, but they're there working for the organization, but they also care about their time and they feel overwhelmed. And if you could pitch the benefits of what it will do for them as far as making their workflow and their processes easier, not just we're going to bring this in and I want everybody to do it, use it. That's not helpful because in any organization, you're going to see people that are going to be hesitant observers to people that are going to be dependent and that cognitive surrender. You're going to see people all over the map. And when you get an email that's written by AI, it loses the human element. You know it. Warm regards right at the bottom. And people don't even think to change some of those things and bring it in and tailor their email responses to their own little speaking language. So give them a great vision. And then you also need to do some follow-up with them. Ask them as far as the communication, because go 360 is how's it helping you? Where is it stalling? And how can I help? That's part of the communication. So it's
Mhm,
just not laying out the tool. It's modeling it, it's inspiring them, and helping them out, and then doing a follow-up.
mhm. Yep.
Thanks, Don.
I have another question, but maybe before I ask the question, let's share the next webinar that we have if people want to register. There you
Oh
go.
yeah. So this is a book. So we alternate between kind of like a practical tool and then talking about a book. So who was it? Truman said, uh, all leaders are readers, right? And so we know there's a time element. So we have read some of these books and bring these out, but this is a book called True Alignment. And the idea behind it is if you can figure out the formula where everybody is pulling in one direction. If you think about like a heavy lift, and Maya has a rope on tied to this, and she's pulling, at 45 degrees. I'm pulling straight ahead at perpendicular 90 degrees. Somebody else is pulling 45. Is you're still kind of moving that task or that object forward, but in some ways you're working against yourselves a little bit. And what this book, True Alignment, that Edgar Papke wrote, it's getting all elements in a single line, pulling one direction. And boy, does you create momentum fasters and momentum faster and efficiencies. It's a great book. He uses a lot of psychology in it. He looks at that he's starting with the customer. What is the customer's intentions in using you? And then from there, what is your marketing and your brand promise to what is your leadership style like? And so it gets everything in line from the top all the way down through the customer. Think about all those links in that chain. And if you're all pulling in the same direction, boy, you can move something very heavy forward much quickly and easily.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great book.
Yeah, that's a great analogy with the rope. I was just
Yeah.
talking to my coworker the other day, and the analogy she used that she sees very often in organizations is everybody playing baseball, but they're all playing on different teams, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
ultimately, they're not winning. So yeah, you can join us in 2 weeks. It's on June 14th, I think. But you don't have to read the book. John will tell you everything you need to know. Just come open-minded and ready to learn. And I think it's a good time to talk. And it's really, really important for any organization to be aligned. But so here's my question is, so we talked a lot about the risk of implementing AI too quickly or without clear intention. Where do you see technology can unintentionally damage culture or employee engagement when something goes wrong?
So when something goes wrong, well,
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, like there's the outward, right, to your customers,
Hmm.
and you have to be very careful. So if there was a data breach where you're feeding the model people's personal information, you got to be very careful that would damage a lot of trust there.
Yeah.
So there's internal and external risks when it does that. Um, and if you implement AI and you have promised that to your organization, this is internal, that it'll be business as usual, will just be faster. And then people keep getting more busy work to help them with AI. You made a promise that we want to help with the human element. And because there is that carrot hanging there. Oh, we got this done in this amount of time. Let's double it.
Mm.
And you keep giving it to the person. Now AI can help with that. But if you're not doing the other investment in them, that's where they'll start to mistrust and read into that. Because I'm just a person pushing buttons. And they're much
Hmm.
more. Your human capital is one of the greatest assets you have as an organization. And I think, and we talked about this in the past, there's three legs to the stool of any organization, right? It's your physical capital, your financial health, it's your physical capital, it's your buildings, your property, your tools, your trucks, all that stuff. And there's the human capital, it's your people. We got to keep investing in the human capital. You have to. That's what's going to keep your stool strong. If you invest in the other two, without that, your stool becomes weak or it becomes lopsided. And then as you onboard more work, it's going to slide off and cause damage.
Hmm. Yeah. One thing I am personally feeling, and I know I hear this a lot from leaders, is that the pace of change feels really exhausting. Are you seeing that too? I just feel like it's
Yes,
moving way too so fast. I can't keep up.
right. Yeah, and that's critical. And that's where I think we go back to the curve is the intentional integration. If you try to do everything, you'll end up doing nothing and just burn your people out. If you
Yeah.
do nothing, you'll frustrate your people. So, what tools are out there that you can implement that are going to help with some of the tasks that people have complained about in their performance evaluations? You have the data. You have it.
Hmm.
I get hijacked, too much time doing this. I can't do this, So you have the data. So get the right tool, train them the right way, and implement it the right way. And then you'll see them almost go, right? But if you try to do everything, all the AI changes, you're not. That's like me going to the gym one day and then looking in the mirror and saying, look how strong I got. It's not done that way. And so you could exhaust your people by trying to do the pace of change and keep up with everything, but pick what works for you. And what works for you is what your people need
Hmm.
as a leader. Don't give them
Kind of
something
go.
they don't need.
Yeah, kind of goes back to our first poll question where people said that one of the biggest challenges is the strategy. So if they don't have
Mhm.
the strategy and the intention, then they could be all over the place. It's like going
Yeah,
back to your gym idea. If you're trying different exercises different days because there are different trends, you will never achieve your ultimate goal, right? Because you're just all over the place. You don't have the intention behind it.
well
Um,
said.
Laura has a great question, John, for you. What additional controls could be implemented in processes to reinforce the benefits of AI? Additional
Controls.
controls.
I'm assuming that means like the controls on the AI model or platform that you're using. I don't know if everybody am I reading it correctly, Maya?
So she just said like internal risk prevention.
Okay.
Internal.
Uh, so number one is upgrade whatever tool that you're using so that you have more control over it and you're not using the generic model that feeds the overall model out there. There are toggle switches on almost every one. I think it's mandated by law that you can use the benefits of AI internally without it feeding your information to the model so the model learns. And they want you to feed the model because the model learns that way by you doing it. But there is a toggle switch. You go through some of the safety windows drops down. So there isn't a information breach that happens out there, but usually it comes with the upscale or the paid version, and it's pretty cheap. So that's a control, um, and that's a machine control. And then you have to train your people as well. People control. What information do we want to share with our AI to help us integrate it? Do we want it to look at all these data and reports? And so we have to be very careful with that. So it's both the people training and training the agent as well, the model.
Mhm. One more question from Nicole. What are the top three best practices for organizations regarding AI use and the organization's information? So controls would be one.
Yeah.
Best practice.
And I mean, I really think for best use, it's for those of you, and it really depends on your job, but I would say trying to create a digital twin or a virtual assistant, right? So it can expedite things. So if you had a virtual assistant that you created and you actually trained the assistant by feeding it some of your old emails, any other writing you've done, any other reports that you did, so it learns you, right? You're training it to respond like you. You could actually speak to your virtual assistant, which might be connected to your phone, and say, when I get to work, please screen through my emails and put them in order of importance, right? So that's one, one big benefit and that agent is private and to you when you kind of put those controls in that we just talked about. But that's just something that as you're on the way to work, just do that. And then you get there and you open up your Outlook, and there it is in order of importance rather than what was sent. So you can respond to the important things right away. And maybe even have it look at it to create task lists. there's that Mark Twain quote. I think I've said it in maybe a webinar before. It says, the first thing you should do every morning is eat your frog. Anybody ever heard of that? I know it sounds weird, but it says if you start your day with the hardest task first, then you have a stronger sense of accomplishment. All the other tasks fall in line with that. So you can have your virtual assistant kind of prioritize the task based on what they think is the heavier lift. Because if you wait till the end of the day to do it, you know what? You'll say, I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and you get caught in the whirlwind again. And then you put off that task to the end of the day when you have less bandwidth, less energy, less insight. So start with your hardest task and use your virtual assistant to your advantage. Hope I answered Laura's question.
So thank you again, everyone, for joining. We hope to see you in 2 weeks for the True Alignment discussion. And if you want to visit our past webinars, you can go to carrollcc.edu/webinars. All the recordings are available along with the handouts. So bookmark, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and if you're outside the organization, here's my contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.